The engine sputtered twice, a dry, violent cough, before dying completely. The massive black Mercedes ground to a halt right in the middle of Fifth Avenue, obstinately blocking the right lane during the height of rush hour. Horns began to blast behind him, a symphony of New York impatience. Robert Sterling slammed his palm against the leather-wrapped steering wheel and checked his luxury watch with frustration. He was late for the most critical meeting of the quarter, the one that would define the corporation's future. He stepped out of the vehicle, loosened the knot of his silk tie, and popped the hood with a sharp, anger-fueled gesture. A column of thick grey smoke rose from the belly of the engine. "Damn it!" He reached for his cell phone, but before his fingers could dial his assistant, a small, quiet voice emerged from his side. "I can fix that." Robert turned his head sharply. Standing there was a scrawny kid, his school uniform stained with old grease, a frayed backpack hanging off one shoulder. He couldn't have been more than 12 years old. He stood there, serious and solemn, as if he had just offered the most natural thing in the world amidst the chaos of midtown traffic. Robert let out a short, harsh laugh, devoid of humor. "Go back to school, kid. You have no business here." "I know what's wrong," the boy insisted calmly. "Just let me look." A bus horn blasted right behind them, vibrating the asphalt. Robert assessed the child again with a skeptical eye. He had small hands, ingrained with black old oil, but his eyes were steady, unwavering. "You can't even reach the engine, son." Leo didn't look away for a second. "Does the mister have another option right now?" Robert crossed his arms over his chest, sighed with resignation, and took a step sideways. "Fine. You have 15 seconds. After that, you get out of here and let me handle it." Leo dropped his backpack on the sidewalk and climbed with agility onto the bumper of the luxury car. Robert held his phone in his hand, thumb hovering over the screen, ready to call a tow truck the instant this turned into a bad joke. The boy stuck his head under the hood, and his fingers began to run along the cables and hoses with a strange, almost intimate familiarity. "Alternator belt snapped," Leo said, his voice echoing with a metallic ring from inside the engine bay. "And the radiator is leaking. You pushed the car too hard coming up the FDR drive." Robert frowned, surprised by the precision. "How do you know I took the FDR?" "By the smell of burning rubber and the heat radiating off the engine block." The boy hopped down and wiped his hands on his uniform shorts, leaving another dark smear. Robert noticed for the first time the ancient grease stains embedded in his fingers, those permanent marks that no longer washed off with soap and water. "Is there a mechanic's shop near here?" Robert asked, his harsh tone softening just a fraction. "There is. But if you wait 10 minutes, I can bring what you need and fix it right here." "You?" "Yes, me." Robert looked around. Traffic was already diverting, drivers screaming insults through open windows. He checked his watch again. The meeting started in exactly 40 minutes. He didn't have time to wait for a tow truck that would take an hour to cross Manhattan. "How much do you want for the job?" $40 for the belt, $20 for my labor, $60. Robert spent more than that on a business breakfast before noon. He pulled a $100 bill from his leather wallet and handed it to the boy without hesitation. "Bring me the change." Leo took the money quickly and took off running. Robert leaned against the car body and lit a cigarette, watching the boy's figure disappear down a side street. 3 minutes later, the kid returned, panting, with a plastic bag in one hand and a large bottle of water in the other. "The water is to top off the radiator," Leo explained, climbing back onto the bumper with the same agility as before. He opened the bag and pulled out a new belt, a screwdriver, and a pair of old but functional pliers. Robert smoked slowly, hypnotized by the child's dexterity. His movements were surgical. There was no hesitation, no trial and error. Leo loosened the tensioner bolts, replaced the broken belt, adjusted the tension using only 2 fingers to measure, and tightened everything back down with strength. 7 minutes exactly. Then he moved to the radiator. He waited a moment for the steam to settle, opened the cap with extreme caution using a rag, and topped off the level with the water. He slammed the hood shut, jumped down to the asphalt, and wiped his hands on his shirt. "You can start it now." Robert got into the car and turned the key. The engine roared to life at the first touch, purring softly as if it had just rolled out of the factory. He revved it twice in neutral. Perfect. He killed the engine and stepped back out onto the street. "How did you learn to do that?" Leo picked his backpack up off the ground. "With my dad." "Is he a mechanic?" The boy lowered his gaze to his worn-out sneakers. "He was." Robert felt a sudden pang in his chest, something tightening, but he said nothing. He pulled out his wallet again and separated another $50. "For the change you brought back." "Keep it." Leo shook his head firmly. "You already paid the agreed price." "Take it. You just saved my entire morning." The boy hesitated for an instant, but finally took the money and stuffed it into his deep pocket. He started to walk away, but Robert called out, "Wait." Leo stopped and turned around. "How old are you?" 12. "And do you do this every day? Fixing cars on the street?" "When I can. Before school starts or after I get out." Robert observed the dirty uniform, the sneakers with holes in the soles, the face too thin for a child his age. "Where do you live?" "Down there." Leo pointed toward the direction of the South Bronx, where the city lost its glimmer. "Does your mother know you're out here working?" "She knows I help out. We need it." Robert fell silent. The cigarette burned down to the filter between his fingers without him noticing. He threw the butt on the ground and crushed it with the tip of his Italian dress shoe. "What's your name?" "Leo." "I'm Robert." The boy nodded, turning to leave for good. Robert stood there, watching him disappear into the tide of cars, his backpack beating rhythmically against his skinny back. He got into the Mercedes and closed the door, isolating himself from the noise. He turned on the air conditioning. The engine purred perfectly. He looked at his watch. He still had enough time to make the meeting, but he didn't put the car in gear. He sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, thinking about the way the boy had spoken of his father. He was. Robert drove a car worth over $100,000. Leo fixed engines on the street for spare change to survive. But that kid held in his dirty hands something Robert had forgotten to look for a long time ago: purpose. He started the car and merged into traffic. But before accelerating, he grabbed his phone and typed a quick note. "Leo, 5th Avenue, the mechanic kid." He didn't know yet why he had done that, but something in that chance encounter had cracked a solid wall inside him. Leo got home at 7:30 in the evening. The tenement apartment was at the end of a gritty block in the Bronx, where the asphalt was cracked and the buildings were stacked against each other in a precarious embrace. He pushed the door open with his shoulder. The hinge had been broken for 3 months, and found Tommy sitting on the linoleum floor of the living room, helping Lily color a torn drawing. "Mom home?" Leo asked, dropping his bag in the corner. Tommy shook his head without looking up from his crayons. Leo went straight to the kitchen. There was plain white rice in the pot and beans on the cold stove. He lit the gas, warmed up the food, and served 2 plates. He called his siblings. They ate fast, in silence, with the hunger of those who hadn't had a snack. Lily asked if there was any meat. Leo told her maybe tomorrow there would be. After dinner, he sat down with Tommy to review his math homework. The notebook was dog-eared at the corners, but the boy had done the exercises with care and dedication. Leo corrected 2 minor errors and explained the procedure for long division again. Tommy listened with absolute attention, chewing on the end of his pencil. Lily yawned loudly on the sagging sofa. Leo picked her up in his arms and carried her to the room they all shared. He laid the little girl on the mattress on the floor, covered her with a thin sheet, and waited for her breathing to deepen. Tommy came in after, slid under the blanket, and turned toward the wall. Leo remained sitting there in the dark, his back against the cold wall, watching the 2 of them sleep. The orange light from the street lamps filtered through the slats of the blinds. He could hear a television blaring next door, a dog barking 3 floors down, someone arguing loudly in the hallway. 2 years ago, his father was still alive. Paul used to wake up at 5 in the morning, brew strong coffee, and take Leo with him to the shop. The boy was 10 years old and already knew how to change oil, service brakes, and diagnose a strange engine noise just by listening to it. Paul always said Leo had good hands. "You were born for this, kid." The shop was small and modest. 2 bays, cracked cement floor, old tools hanging neatly on the wall. But there was always work. Paul fixed cars for people in the neighborhood, charged little, and offered credit when it was needed. On weekends, Leo spent the entire day there, passing tools, learning, asking questions endlessly. His father never raised his voice. He explained everything with infinite calm, showed where each piece fit, let Leo try to do it alone, even when it took longer. Mistakes are part of the process. The important thing is not to quit. Then came the headache. Too strong to be normal. Paul said it would pass. It didn't pass. A week later, he collapsed in the middle of the shop. Leo was there. He saw his father's body hit the cement floor. He screamed for help. The ambulance took 40 minutes to arrive in their neighborhood. At the hospital, the doctors talked about a cerebral aneurysm, emergency surgery, high risk. Paul died 3 days later. Leo didn't go into the room to say goodbye. He stayed in the hallway, sitting on the cold tile floor, his mother crying, clinging to him. He was 11. Tommy was 6. Lily was 4, and didn't understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. Sarah tried to keep the shop open, but without Paul and his magic, the clients stopped coming. The tools were sold one by one to pay the debts from the funeral and the hospital. The space was rented to someone else. All that was left was a toolbox that Sarah kept under the bed in the bedroom. Leo opened that box every night before sleeping, just to smell the grease and metal that still reminded him of his father. Sarah found work as a housekeeper. She cleaned 6 houses a week. She left at 5 in the morning and came back at 8 at night, exhausted. She brought food the employers had left over, clothes the employers' children didn't wear anymore. Leo took charge of everything else. Waking Tommy and Lily, making coffee, taking them to school, picking them up in the afternoon, helping with homework, bathing them, putting them to bed. And when there was a little time left, he took his father's toolbox and went out into the street. He started small. He changed bicycle tires for $5, fixed old fans for 10. Then he moved on to cars. He learned on his own what his father hadn't had time to teach him. He watched videos on his phone with the cracked screen, asked the local mechanics for tips, tried until it worked. At first, no one trusted him. An 11-year-old kid touching an engine? But Leo solved the problem. Word spread through the neighborhood. He started making $20, $30, $50 a day. He gave everything to his mother. She cried, told him he needed to study, not work. Leo answered that he could do both. Now he was 12. He slept 4 hours a night. He got up at 5:30, prepared everything for his siblings, went out to the street to fix a car before school. He studied from 8 to noon. He came back, picked up Tommy and Lily from school, gave them lunch, helped with homework, and went out to the street again until dark. He came back, made dinner, checked notebooks, put the 2 to bed. Then he sat there in the dark, thinking about his father. Leo never had toys. He never asked for anything. He just wanted Tommy and Lily not to go hungry. He wanted his mother not to cry every night, thinking he couldn't hear her. He wanted his father's memory not to fade. He looked at his siblings sleeping. Lily snored softly. Tommy had his hand under his head, sleeping in the same position their father used to. Leo closed his eyes, exhausted. Tomorrow would be exactly the same. But at least today, he had made $70 total. That was enough to buy meat for the weekend. Robert appeared on 5th Avenue the next day, same time. The Mercedes was parked at the corner when Leo walked by with his backpack on his way to school. The boy stopped dead in his tracks. Robert stepped out of the car and waved. "Good morning." Leo approached, suspicious and alert. "Something happened to the car? It's making a strange noise. I wanted you to take a look at it." Leo dropped his backpack on the ground and asked Robert to start the engine. The sound came out clean, pure, without any abnormal noise. He asked him to rev it. Nothing. He asked him to kill it and popped the hood. He checked the belts, hoses, oil level. Everything was perfect. "There's nothing wrong here," Leo said, wiping his hands on a rag he pulled from his pocket. Robert leaned against the car, arms crossed and a calm expression. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. You changed the oil recently. New filter. Engine runs clean. If there was a noise yesterday, it's gone." Robert smiled for the first time. A small, almost embarrassed smile. "You're the real deal, aren't you?" Leo understood instantly. There was no noise. It was a test. He grabbed his backpack to leave, but Robert spoke before he could take a step. "Do you eat breakfast before you head out?" "I already ate something." "Eat again, with me." Leo looked at the digital clock on a billboard. 15 minutes until class started. "I'm going to be late. I'll drive you afterwards, in the car." "We'll be there in 2 minutes." The boy hesitated, eyeing the shiny vehicle. Robert pointed to an upscale diner across the street. 5 minutes. "I just want to talk." They sat at a booth near the window. Robert ordered black coffee and a basket of bagels and muffins. Leo asked for just an orange juice. When the food arrived, Robert pushed the plate toward the boy's side. "Eat. I'll order another one for myself." Leo ate slowly, chewing thoroughly, not showing the hunger that gnawed at him. Robert drank his coffee in silence, observing him closely. The kid had a thin, angular face, but his shoulders were starting to broaden. Small hands, but with the calluses of someone who handled tools every day. Sharp eyes. Tired, yes, but very sharp. "Why did you come back?" Leo asked suddenly. Robert set his porcelain cup on the table gently. "I kept thinking about what you did yesterday. It's not normal. A kid your age knowing mechanics like that? My dad taught me. He must have been very good." Leo lowered his gaze to the table. "He was the best." Robert caught the past tense verb. He didn't press. He stayed quiet, letting the calm fill the space between them without awkwardness. Leo finished the last piece of bagel and drank the rest of the juice. "Can I ask you a question?" Robert said. "You can." "Why do you do this? Fixing cars on the street instead of playing, I don't know, baseball with your friends?" Leo looked out at the street through the glass. A group of kids walked by laughing, wearing brand-name clothes and new backpacks. "Because we need to eat," he answered with brutal simplicity. "My mom works all day. I help the way I know how." Robert felt that pressure in his chest again, that same suffocating sensation from the day before. He took another sip of coffee and chose his words carefully. "I come from a poor family too." "Did you know that?" Leo looked at him, genuinely surprised. "Seriously?" "Seriously. I grew up in a gritty neighborhood in Queens. My dad was a bricklayer. My mom was a seamstress. We lived in an apartment smaller than this diner." Robert made a sweeping gesture, encompassing the mirror-lined room. "I worked since I was 10, carrying cement bags, helping on construction sites, selling newspapers." "How did you get rich?" "I studied a lot. I won a scholarship to business school. Then I got my MBA, started my own company, invested right, grew." He paused, staring into the bottom of his cup. "But along the way, I lost one thing." "What thing?" Robert took a moment to answer. He looked at his own hands. Clean hands, perfect manicure, a gold Swiss watch on his wrist. "Empathy. I forgot where I came from. I became just like the people I hated when I was a kid. The ones who walked past me and didn't even look. The ones who thought poor people are poor because they want to be." Leo said nothing. He just listened intently, absorbing every word. "Yesterday, when you fixed my car, I remembered myself at your age. Doing odd jobs, helping at home, tired but not giving up." Robert looked the child in the eye. "You reminded me of who I was before I became this version I am today." "What version?" Robert let out a joyless laugh. "The version that has a 16-year-old son living under his roof but hasn't seen him in 3 months. The version that works so much he forgot why he does it. The version that has money but has nothing that actually matters." Leo played with the empty glass, spinning it on the table. You have a son? I do. Gabriel. He goes to the most expensive prep school in the city, has a bedroom bigger than your apartment, an obscene allowance every month. And you know what he does? He complains that his phone is last year's model. He complains that I won't let him go to Europe with his friends. He complains that his life is hard. He doesn't know what real life is like. He doesn't. Because I gave him everything and I thought that was enough. But it wasn't enough. I raised a boy who has everything and values nothing. Robert shook his head with regret. You're 12 and you support a family. He's 16 and doesn't even know how to boil water. Leo stayed quiet, processing the information. Then he spoke in a low voice. My dad always used to say that what matters isn't what you have. It's what you do with what you have. Robert felt a tight knot in his throat. He blinked rapidly, looking away toward the window. Your father was a wise man. He was everything. The boy's voice trembled for a second. Robert saw his eyes shine with held-back tears, but Leo didn't let them fall. He took a deep breath, steady in that way children who have to be strong too soon learn to do. How did he die? Robert asked, knowing he was treading on sacred, painful ground. Aneurysm, a headache that wouldn't go away. 3 days in the hospital and he was gone. I was 11. I'm so sorry. Me too. Silence again. But this time it was different. It wasn't awkwardness. It was understanding. 2 strangers sharing a wait no one else saw in that luxury diner. Robert signaled the waitress and paid the check. He looked at his watch. Come on, I'll drive you to school. They walked out of the diner. Leo grabbed his backpack and got into the Mercedes. The car smelled like new leather and ice-cold air conditioning. So different from everything he knew in his world. Robert started the engine, the same engine Leo had resurrected the day before, and merged into traffic. Can I ask you a favor? Robert said, eyes fixed on the road. You can. Teach me to be human again. Leo turned his head, confused by the request. What do you mean? You're 12 years old, and you already know things I completely forgot. About working hard, about taking care of who matters, about never giving up. Robert glanced at the boy briefly. I want to learn that again. With you. Leo didn't know what to say to that, so he simply nodded his head slightly. Robert parked in front of the main gate of the public middle school. Leo got out, but before closing the passenger door he spoke. Thanks for the coffee and bagels. Thank you for reminding me who I'm supposed to be. Leo closed the door and ran through the rusty fence of the schoolyard. Robert stayed there for a few seconds, watching the kid disappear into the crowd of students. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel empty inside. He had found something that no amount of money in his bank accounts could buy. Purpose, again. Robert came back the next day, and the next, and the one after that. Always at 7 in the morning, he parked at the corner and waited for Leo to come out of his building. He took the boy to breakfast before school. Sometimes they talked about trivial things. Sometimes they sat in silence, simply sharing the table and the company. Leo ate slowly, savoring every bite like it was treasure. Robert always paid and never made a show of it. On Thursday, Robert asked if he could meet Leo's mother. The boy hesitated a moment, evaluating, but finally agreed. They drove to the tenement building in the Bronx. Sarah was rushing to finish tidying the house before leaving for her job. When she saw the man in the impeccable suit standing at her door, she wiped her hands on her apron nervously and looked embarrassed. "Mom, this is Robert, the guy with the car I fixed the other day." Sarah shook his hand with extreme caution, as if afraid to dirty him with her touch. "Pleasure. Excuse the mess, please." "There is no mess," Robert said kindly, looking around. The living room was tiny. An old, sagging sofa, a small television on a plastic crate, a patched curtain on the window. But everything was immaculate. The floor swept, the dishes washed and dried in the kitchen sink, the blankets folded with precision in the bedroom. "Leo helped me a lot the other day," Robert continued. "I wanted to thank you in person." "Can I take you all to lunch this Sunday?" Sarah looked at her son, searching for a signal. Leo shrugged. "You don't need to trouble yourself, mister. It's no trouble. It's an invitation." Tommy and Lily poked their heads out from the bedroom, curious. They stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the stranger in the suit. Robert crouched down to be at their eye level. "And you two, would you like to eat pizza?" Lily's eyes went wide. "Pizza? The biggest one you've ever seen in your life?" Tommy looked at his mother, waiting for official permission. Sarah took a deep breath, defeated. "Okay, but we help pay the bill." "I won't accept that," Robert said, standing up. "Until Sunday, then." He left before Sarah could insist with her pride. Leo walked him to the car. "Why are you doing all this?" the boy asked directly. Robert opened the door of the Mercedes and turned to him. "Because I want to, and because you deserve it." On Sunday, Robert arrived right at noon. He took everyone to an Italian restaurant in Tribeca, an exclusive neighborhood. Sarah was visibly uncomfortable, dressed in the nicest clothes she owned, but still feeling out of place among the white tablecloths and crystal glasses. The kids stayed quiet at first, impressed by the size of the leather-bound menu. Robert ordered giant pizzas, pitchers of soda, elaborate desserts. He encouraged Tommy and Lily to choose whatever they wanted without looking at the prices. He talked with Sarah about her work, her employers, her exhausting routine. She relaxed little by little, talking about the 6 houses she cleaned every week, the constant pain in her legs at the end of the day, the perpetual fear of losing her job. "Have you thought about looking for a job with benefits and a contract?" Robert asked. "I think about it every day, but no one hires a housekeeper formally. They say it costs too much. It costs too much for those who don't want to do things right." Leo ate his pizza in silence, observing the way Robert treated his mother, with absolute respect, without pity, as an equal. That was rare. Most people looked at Sarah as if she were invisible or part of the furniture. After lunch, Robert asked if he could help with anything urgent. Sarah said they didn't need anything. He insisted gently. She finally admitted in a low voice that the electric bill was overdue and they feared a shut-off. Robert paid it right then and there from his phone. Sarah started to cry silently. Robert took a cloth napkin and handed it to her delicately. "Don't cry. That's just a digital piece of a bill. You support 3 children alone. That's hero stuff, Sarah." In the weeks that followed, Robert became a constant presence in their lives. He appeared in the morning, drove Leo to school, picked him up in the afternoon. Sometimes he brought new, high-quality school supplies, hardcover notebooks, professional colored pencils, backpacks without tears. Other times, he brought food, beef, chicken, bags of rice. He left everything on the kitchen table and left before Sarah could thank him too much. He started staying for conversations. He sat on the old living room sofa, drank the weak coffee Sarah made, played with Tommy and Lily on the floor. He helped Leo with advanced math homework. He taught him the rule of 3, percentages, compound interest. The kid learned at an astounding speed. "You have a gifted mind for numbers," Robert said, checking the notebook full of equations. "Have you ever thought about studying engineering in college?" Leo let out a short, cynical laugh. "I'll barely finish high school. College is for rich people." "Nonsense. There are scholarships, there are loans. If you want it, you can get it. You got it. And you will too." Leo didn't answer, but he stored that sentence in a deep place in his mind. No one had ever spoken about his future, as if it were something possible and bright. Robert started taking Leo to some of his work engagements, simple meetings, business lunches, visits to suppliers. The boy went in his school uniform, quiet, observing everything like a sponge. Robert explained afterwards what had happened, how a negotiation works, how to read people's body language, how to know when to accept or reject a proposal. "Why are you teaching me all this?" Leo asked one day, coming back from a meeting in a midtown skyscraper. "Because you're intelligent, and one day you're going to need to know it. I'm going to be a mechanic, just like my dad. You can be whatever you want to be, Mechanic, engineer, entrepreneur. The world is yours, Leo. You just need to believe it. The boy stayed quiet, looking out the tinted window of the car. My dad used to say I could be whatever I wanted to. He was right. Robert also started to learn. Leo taught him without realizing it. About genuine gratitude. About valuing simple things. About working hard without ever complaining. About taking care of who matters, even when you're exhausted to the bone. One Saturday, Robert helped fix the electric shower head in the apartment. He stood on a wobbly stool, handled the wiring, took 2 small shocks. Leo laughed, telling him he should have flipped the breaker first. Robert laughed too, a frank laugh he hadn't emitted in months. Afterward, they sat on the landing, drinking warm soda. Tommy played soccer down on the street with his friends. Lily played with a doll on the hallway floor. Sarah hung laundry on a makeshift line. Robert looked around and felt something strange and alien. Peace. That cramped apartment, without luxury, without comfort, had something his 5-bedroom mansion didn't. It had life. It had laughter. It had people who actually cared about each other. "Are you happy here?" Robert asked in a low voice. Leo thought for a moment before answering. "I was happier when my dad was alive. But, yeah, we don't have much, but we have each other. That's already enough." Robert took a sip of the warm soda and looked at the boy with admiration. "You're right. I have everything, and I have nothing. You have nothing material, and you have everything." Leo shrugged naturally. "You have us now." Robert felt his throat close up suddenly. He put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "I have you. And that's worth more than any deal I've ever closed in my life." They sat there, watching evening fall over the projects, listening to Tommy yell, "Goal!" Lily singing to herself, Sarah whistling while she pinned clothes. Robert realized that for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about the next meeting, the profit margin, the annual growth. He was simply there, present, whole, human. Leo had fixed much more than a car engine that morning on 5th Avenue. He had fixed a man. The board of directors meeting was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Robert entered the conference room on the top floor of the corporate headquarters, with his leather briefcase under his arm and his impeccable suit as armor. 12 ergonomic chairs around the tempered glass table. 11 were already occupied. Marcus Vance was at the opposite end, his tablet in front of him, and a thin, sharp smile on his face. Majority shareholder, 48 years old. He had the look of a shark smelling blood in the water. "Running late, Robert?" "Traffic," Robert answered dryly, taking his seat. "Of course, traffic." Marcus slid a finger across his tablet screen sparingly. "Or were you busy with your new social projects?" The room fell into a sepulchral silence. Robert opened his briefcase and pulled out the quarterly reports. "Can we begin?" Marcus let out a short, mocking laugh. "We've already begun. You're the one who arrived late." Robert ignored him. He started presenting the numbers projected on the screen. Growth of 18%, 3 new contracts signed with multinationals, expansion planned for the South, everything within expectations. Better than expectations, actually, but no one seemed interested in the performance charts. "Robert," Marcus interrupted, his voice too calm, "we need to talk about your public image." "My image?" Marcus turned his tablet and projected an image on the giant wall screen. A photo. Robert sitting on the step of a tenement building next to Leo, both drinking soda from the bottle, taken from afar, with a telephoto lens but sharp. Another photo. Robert at the diner, pushing the plate of bagels toward the kid. Another one. Robert helping Sarah carry grocery bags from the market. All had a date and timestamp. All were from the last 3 weeks. "What is this?" Robert asked, his voice low and dangerous. "It's the CEO of this company turning into a babysitter for a street kid," Marcus answered, leaning back in his chair. "It's you wasting the company's precious time on cheap charity. It's you staining the image of our luxury brand." Robert felt the blood rush to his head. "Who took these photos?" "It doesn't matter who. What matters is that they are circulating among investors, partners, competitors. Everyone is talking about it, Robert. The businessman turned social worker. I didn't ask for anyone's opinion on my private life. Your private life became public the moment you started driving around with people from the projects in the company car, Marcus said, spitting the words with contempt. Do you think that projects are good image? A billionaire playing daddy with a street urchin? Robert stood up abruptly, fists clenched on the table. Be very careful with what you say. Or what? You're going to hit me here in front of the board? Marcus smiled maliciously. Sit down, Robert. I haven't finished yet. Another slide appeared on the screen, an article from a financial gossip blog. Headline in bold, Millionaire entrepreneur adopts dubious cause, marketing or real compassion. Photos of Leo fixing the car on the street, photos of the miserable building, photos of the family exposed. You exposed these people, Marcus said, feigning moral concern. You turned them into a circus, and in the process you exposed us too. Our clients don't want to associate the brand with extreme poverty, Robert. They want luxury, exclusivity, unattainable status. They are people. They are not marketing. And we are a company, not a charity. Robert looked at the other board members seeking support. Some looked away at their papers. Others nodded, tacitly agreeing with Marcus. No one defended him. So that's it, Robert said, his voice trembling with contained rage. You want me to abandon a family because it doesn't look good in the corporate photo? We want you to remember who you are, Marcus replied, standing up too. You are a businessman. You are not the savior of the world. Those people don't need you. They need public policy, social assistance, a competent government. Not a midlife crisis millionaire wanting to alleviate his bourgeois guilt. I am not alleviating any guilt. Of course you are, and you're doing it at the expense of this company's reputation. Marcus walked until he was face to face with Robert. The board has already decided. Either you distance yourself from that family immediately and focus on what matters, or we review your position as CEO right here and now. Robert remained silent. The hum of the air conditioning filled the void. No one dared to breathe loudly. Are you giving me an ultimatum? We are giving you a choice, business or charity. You can't do both at the same time. Robert looked at the screen again, Leo smiling shyly in that stolen photo, Sarah carrying bags, Tommy playing soccer, Lily sitting on the floor, everything exposed, everything turned into a weapon against him. How long do I have to decide? 1 week. Robert took his briefcase, turned around, and walked out of the room. He didn't wait for the meeting to formally end. He entered the private elevator, went down 20 floors in absolute silence, and walked out of the building straight to the underground garage. He got into his Mercedes and hit the steering wheel with frustration. He turned on his phone. He had a message from an unknown number. He opened it, a link to a Twitter thread. He clicked. The photos were there, all of them, with hundreds of cruel comments. Businessman uses poor people to clean up his image. All marketing. I bet he pays an actor. Rich people don't change. They only pretend to change to sell more. That kid is going to be disappointed when the rich guy gets tired of his new toy. Robert closed the app with disgust. He took a deep breath, trying to calm down. He picked up his phone again and called Leo. It rang 4 times. No one answered. He drove at full speed to the Bronx. He knocked on the apartment door with urgency. Sarah opened, eyes red and swollen. He doesn't want to talk to anyone, she said, voice weak and broken. Please, Sarah, let me explain. Explain what? That you used my son to feel like a good person? That you took photos of him without asking and spread them all over the internet? I didn't spread anything. Someone followed me, a paparazzi or a rival. Someone did this to hurt me. And the one who got hurt was him, Sarah screamed, her voice breaking into sobs. The kids at school called him the rich guy's pet. They said you are paying us to pretend we are your friends. Leo came back crying, Robert, crying like never before. Robert felt the floor disappear beneath his feet. Where is he? Locked in the bedroom. He won't come out. He won't eat. He just repeats that it was his fault, that he never should have fixed your car, that he became a problem. He is not a problem. Then why is this happening? Robert had no answer for that. Sarah closed the door in his face. He stood there in front of the worn wood, listening to the muffled sound of crying coming from inside. He pulled out his phone again, more notifications vibrating, more hate comments, more people who didn't know Leo judging, speculating, destroying. Robert leaned against the hallway wall and let his head fall back. He had tried to do the right thing. He had tried to reconnect with his own humanity. He had found purpose again. And now everything was crumbling around him. Because of a few photos, because of others' envy, because of a cynical system that didn't forgive genuine kindness. He looked out the hallway window. Evening fell heavily over the neighborhood. The sun disappeared behind the towers in the distance. 1 week to decide, business or Leo, status or humanity. Robert closed his eyes tightly, and for the first time in his adult life, he didn't know which path to choose. Robert didn't sleep that night. He spent the dark hours sitting on the terrace of his mansion, looking at the artificially lit garden, the empty pool reflecting the indifferent moon. The house was 5,000 square feet of luxury, 5 bedrooms, none occupied except his own. Gabriel lived there in theory, but he was traveling with friends in Europe, always traveling, always far away. He grabbed his phone and opened the photo gallery. Leo smiling at the diner with his mouth full. Sarah hanging clothes. Tommy shouting an imaginary goal. Lily coloring on the linoleum floor. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of loneliness. Monday morning, Robert entered his office at 7 sharp. He convened an emergency board meeting for 10 o'clock. Marcus replied to the email with a simple question mark. Robert gave no explanations. At 9:30, he prepared his presentation. It wasn't about financial numbers. It wasn't about million-dollar contracts. It was about Leo. 10 o'clock sharp. The conference room was full and tense. Marcus was at the head of the table, arms crossed, and that confident smile of someone who believes he has already won the game. "Well," Marcus said arrogantly, "have you made your sensible decision?" Robert connected his laptop to the projector. The giant screen lit up. First image, Leo at 12 years old, hands black with grease, fixing the engine of a Mercedes in the middle of 5th Avenue. "Yes, I made it." Marcus let out a satisfied chuckle. "Excellent. Now we can focus on what really matters again." Robert advanced to the next slide. A photo of Leo, much younger, next to his father Paul in the old garage. A scanned image Sarah had lent him. This boy lost his father at 11. Massive cerebral aneurysm, 3 days of agony in a public hospital. The family was left with nothing. Robert's voice was calm, but firm like steel. His mother works 14 hours a day scrubbing floors. 6 houses a week. She earns minimum wage. He takes care of his younger siblings, 8 and 6 years old. He gets up at 5:30, makes coffee, takes them to school, picks them up, helps with homework, puts them to bed. And in the time he has left, he fixes cars on the street for $30, $40 to buy food for that same night. Absolute silence in the room. Robert advanced again, the photo of Leo concentrated on fixing the radiator. He is 12. And he knows mechanics better than professionals with 20 years of experience. He has what they call good hands. Precise diagnosis. Works fast. And do you know why? Because his father taught him with love. Because he paid attention. Because he deeply values what he learned. Marcus uncrossed his arms, losing his smile. "Where are you going with all this drama, Robert?" "You gave me an ultimatum last week," Robert answered, looking each of the present members in the eye. "Business or charity? Company or humanity? Reputation or compassion?" He turned off the projector abruptly. "I already chose." "Great. Then let's move on to, I choose Leo." The room froze as if someone had opened the windows in winter. Marcus blinked, not comprehending. "What did you say?" "I said I choose that kid." I choose that family. I choose to remember where I come from. I choose not to become the kind of person I hated when I was a child. And Robert took off his silk tie and threw it on the glass table. You want a company without a soul? You want profit without purpose? You want to grow by stepping on those who are at the bottom? Then grow without me. Marcus jumped to his feet. Are you resigning from your position? I am doing what I should have done a long time ago. I am choosing who I want to be in this life. You are going to lose everything, Robert. No, I am going to gain what actually matters. Robert took his empty briefcase. You are the ones who have already lost everything. You just haven't realized it yet. He walked out of the room with a steady step. He didn't wait for an answer. He didn't look back. He entered the elevator, went down to the lobby, crossed the marble atrium, pushed the revolving door, and stepped out onto the street. The sun beat down hard on the city. Traffic was loud and chaotic, people running everywhere. Robert took a deep breath, filling his lungs. Free. He got into his Mercedes, started the engine, and drove straight to the Bronx. He parked at the curb, got out, and walked to the apartment building. He knocked on the door with his knuckles. No one answered. He knocked again, harder. Sarah? Leo? Please, open up. The door opened very slowly. Sarah had a swollen face, hollow eyes of someone who hasn't slept in days due to anguish. What do you want now? To talk to Leo. He doesn't want to talk to you. I know. But I need to talk to him. Just 5 minutes, Sarah. Sarah looked at the man in the suit standing there, in the dust, face tired and shoulders slumped, without his usual tie. She sighed deeply. He's in the bedroom. Robert entered. Tommy and Lily were sitting on the sofa, quiet as statues, watching television with no volume. They didn't even turn around when he passed through the living room. The bedroom door was ajar. Robert pushed it gently. Leo was sitting on the mattress on the floor, hugging his knees to his chest, staring at the peeling wall. Can I come in? Leo didn't answer. Robert walked in anyway. He sat on the linoleum floor, leaning against the opposite wall, facing the boy. I know you're angry, and you have every right in the world. I ruined everything. I exposed you. I turned your life into a public spectacle. You became a target because of me. Leo continued in silence, motionless. But I came to tell you something important. Robert took a breath. I resigned from the company this morning. In front of all of them. I chose you, Leo. Leo turned his head very slowly, disbelieving. Why? Because you taught me something I had completely forgotten. You taught me that having all the money in the world means nothing if you have no one to share it with. You taught me that hard work family, caring for each other, that is worth more than any $1,000,000 contract, any profit, any social status. Robert felt his voice crack with emotion. You fixed a car engine, but you fixed much more than that. You fixed what was broken inside of me. Leo wiped his wet face with the sleeve of his old shirt. The kids at school said you were just pretending, that you would get tired and disappear. That rich people don't really care about poor people. And did you believe that? Leo took a moment to answer, looking down. I was scared it was true. Robert stood up, crossed the small space of the room, and sat next to the boy on the mattress. I never pretended, Leo. Everything I did because I wanted to. Because you matter. Because your mum matters. Because Tommy and Lily matter. He put his hand firmly on Leo's shoulder. And I am not going to disappear. A storm can come, critics can come, judgments can come. I am not going anywhere. Leo looked at the man beside him. His eyes were full of held-back tears, threatening to overflow. I thought it was my fault, for fixing your car, for accepting your help. The fault was never yours. It was the fault of people who don't understand that kindness is not a weakness. That taking care of those in need is not a marketing strategy. That humanity is not a business plan. Robert squeezed the boy's shoulder with affection. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just yourself, and that is the most right thing that exists in this world. Leo broke down. He cried for the first time with force since his father had died. He cried for the fear of having lost someone he cared about. He cried for the immense weight of carrying a family alone while being a child. He cried because someone had chosen him above everything else. Robert hugged the boy. He let him cry out everything he needed. He said nothing else. He just stayed there, holding him tight, proving with actions that he wasn't going to let go. Sarah appeared in the doorway, hand covering her mouth, crying too. Tommy and Lily came behind, joining the collective hug, all together in the tiny room on a mattress on the floor, with the afternoon sun coming through the slat in the blinds. Robert closed his eyes, feeling the human warmth. He had lost his position, his status, his board of directors, his partners, but he had gained a family, and for the first time in his entire life, he knew with absolute certainty that he had made the right decision. 3 months later, Robert signed the official papers for the opening of the Institute. It wasn't a huge place at first. 2 floors of a renovated commercial building in an accessible industrial zone. Classrooms, a fully equipped mechanical workshop, a small library, a community cafeteria. The name shone on the metal plaque at the entrance. Paul Miller Institute, Education and Work. Leo was at his side when the plaque was installed on the wall. He ran his fingers over the engraved letters, his father's name. He would like this, the boy said in a low voice. He would be immensely proud of you, Robert answered. The program started simply. 15 spots. Youths from 12 to 17 years old from the neighborhood. Technical automotive mechanics course in the morning, regular school in the afternoon, tutoring in the evening, everything 100% free. Full meals included, supplies provided, transportation paid. Leo was the first student enrolled. He was also the first official monitor. At 12, he taught engine diagnostics to boys 4 years older than him. They listened to him with absolute respect. He knew exactly what he was doing. Sarah left her housekeeping job. Robert offered her a formal position at the Institute, administrative coordinator. Signed contract, health insurance, benefits, a salary of $4,000 a month. She cried when she saw her first official pay stub. She cried again when she deposited half into a savings account she had opened for her children's future. Tommy and Lily entered a private school in the neighborhood. It wasn't the most expensive or elite, but it was good. Attentive teachers, quality food in the cafeteria, clean and new uniforms. Tommy started to become passionate about natural sciences. Lily discovered an innate talent for drawing and painting. They came home animated, showing their notebooks, telling stories about their day non-stop. The new house was in a simple middle-class neighborhood, but safe. 2 real bedrooms, living room, equipped kitchen, a bathroom with constant hot water. Leo had a real bed for the first time in years. His siblings, too. Sarah cried the first day, sitting on a sofa that wasn't torn, seeing the fridge full of food, the new television, the windows with unbroken glass. "It feels like a dream," she said, disbelieving. "It is real, Sarah," Robert answered, sitting beside her, "and you deserve it more than anyone." Leo continued fixing cars on the street occasionally. But now it was different. He chose his hours. Saturday mornings, a few hours. Not out of necessity for survival, for pleasure. Because he liked it, because it was what his father had taught him and he didn't want to forget his roots. And he started teaching others. Kids from the community appeared, curious, wanting to learn the trade. Leo showed them, explained to them, let them try with their own hands, exactly the same way Paul had done with him. Robert brought Gabriel to meet the Institute. His son had returned from his trip, tanned, backpack full of designer clothes and a detached attitude. He walked into the shop with suspicion, looking around as if he had landed on another hostile planet. Leo was under a Volkswagen Golf, changing the head gasket. Gabriel stood frozen in the doorway, hands in the pockets of his expensive jeans. "He's your age," Robert said, pointing to the boy sliding out from under the car. "So?" "And he supported his family all alone for a whole year. He takes care of his siblings. He works, he studies, and he still finds time to teach others. Gabriel didn't answer, but his expression changed slightly. Leo slid completely out from under the car, wiped his hands on a rag, and extended a stained hand toward the boy in the designer shirt. "Hi, you're Gabriel." Gabriel shook his hand, a little uncomfortable with the grease, but firm. "That's me. Your dad talks about you a lot." "He talks?" "He talks. He said you're really smart, that you get good grades in everything, that you're really good at English." Gabriel blinked, surprised. His father never praised him to his face. He only demanded more. Robert put a hand on each of their shoulders. "You two need to get to know each other better." Leo went back to his work. Gabriel stayed watching, fascinated. After a few minutes of silence, he asked, "Can I help with something?" Leo smiled, a white smile in the middle of a stained face. "You can. Pass me that wrench over there." Gabriel grabbed the wrong tool. Leo corrected him with infinite patience. He taught him where each piece was, what tool was used for what, how to tighten a screw without stripping the thread. Gabriel listened, attentive as never before. For the first time in months, he wasn't looking at his phone screen every 5 seconds. By the end of the afternoon, they were sitting on the shop floor, sharing a familiar soda and chatting like old friends. Gabriel talked about his school, his superficial friends, the constant pressure he felt to be perfect. Leo talked about his father, the loss, the crushing weight of growing up too fast. Gabriel realized his own problems were tiny compared to what Leo had faced day after day. "Sorry," Gabriel said in a low voice. "Why?" "For complaining about stupid stuff, while you were going through all this alone." Leo shrugged with simplicity. "Everyone has their own fight. Yours is different, but it's not less real to you." Robert watched everything from afar, leaning against the doorframe of the office, seeing the two boys talking, seeing his son learn real empathy, seeing Leo teach life lessons without even realizing it. That night, Gabriel had dinner with Robert for the first time in 6 months without arguing. They talked for real, without fighting, without demands or expectations, just a father and a son trying to connect again. The institute grew exponentially. More students arrived every month. More monitors joined. Partnerships with companies in the automotive sector, young people graduating and getting formal, dignified jobs, some opening their own mechanic shops, others going to engineering school with full scholarships. Leo became a living symbol, not because Robert wanted to use him for marketing, but because the other students looked at him and saw it was possible. That poverty wasn't an inescapable destiny. That loss wasn't the end of the road. That hard work, education, and genuine support could change the trajectory of a life. Sarah didn't cry from despair anymore. She cried from pure gratitude. Every night before sleeping, she looked at her 3 children sleeping in real beds, in a house with a solid roof with a full fridge, and thanked God and Robert. Robert no longer felt that hole in his chest. He had a clear purpose. He had an extended family. He had a real legacy being built with his hands. And Leo, at 12 years old, had learned that fixing a car was important, but fixing people was transformative. 5 years later, the plaque at the entrance had been changed. It was bigger, more visible. Paul Miller Institute. 200 lives transformed. Leo was 17 now. Broad shoulders, hands still marked by grease, but his face much less tired and more mature. He was finishing his senior year of high school in the morning and managing the workshop school in the afternoon. 7 monitors worked under his supervision, all former students of the program, all with stories very similar to his. The workshop had grown enormously. It occupied the entire ground floor of the building, 12 hydraulic bays, professional latest generation equipment, contracts with 3 major dealerships that sent cars for regular maintenance. The young people learned with real service, earned industry-recognized certificates, and left with guaranteed employment. Robert was at the reception, hair grey now, and reading glasses hanging around his neck. He didn't wear Italian suits anymore. He wore a simple shirt, jeans, and comfortable sneakers. He coordinated the strategic partnerships department, looked for sponsors, organized charity events. It was volunteer work, but it was what fulfilled him most in the world. Gabriel was at his side, a tablet in hand, reviewing a spreadsheet of operating costs. 21 years old. Graduated from business school with honors. He could be working at any multinational making millions. He chose to stay there. Financial director of the Institute. Symbolic salary. Infinite satisfaction. Sarah walked into the room with a folder full of documents. 42 years old, wearing the official Institute uniform, with her ID badge around her neck. General coordinator now. She commanded an administrative team of 12 people. She organized enrollment, monitored attendance, maintained contact with the students' families. She was respected by everyone. She was an essential piece of the gears. Tommy was 13, a model student at the Institute too. He wanted to become an automotive mechanical engineer. He studied in the same place where his brother had started it all. Lily, at 11, drew the artistic posters for the venue's events. She had impressive talent. Robert was already managing an art scholarship for when she was a little older. Evening was falling softly when Leo heard a metallic noise at the main workshop gate. He turned his head. A little girl of about 10, with a dirty school uniform and an old bicycle at her side, stood there. The front wheel was completely bent with loose and twisted spokes. Leo wiped his hands and walked toward her with a smile. "Hi, what happened here?" The little girl looked at the ground, shy and scared. "I hit a pothole. The wheel broke. My mom doesn't have money to fix it, but I need it to go to school every day." Leo crouched down to be at her eye level, just as Robert had done with him years before. "What's your name?" "Emily." "Emily, you came to the right place." He took the bicycle with care and wheeled it toward his workbench. "Sit there on that stool. This is going to take about 20 minutes. The little girl sat, legs dangling and swinging, watching fascinated as Leo worked. He straightened the rim, changed 3 broken spokes for new ones, adjusted the worn brakes, inflated the tires. 22 minutes exactly. He handed the bicycle back to her. Emily opened her eyes wide with surprise. "It's like new." "Almost. You just need to be more careful with the holes in the road." Leo smiled at her warmly. "And you don't have to pay anything for this." "Really? Really?" Emily grabbed the handlebars of her bike, but before leaving she stopped and asked, "Why do you do this, mister?" Leo looked toward the back wall. There was a framed photo. Him at 12 years old, next to Robert, the day they met at the diner. Under the photo, a shiny metal plate read, "Small gestures build bridges." "Because someone did this for me once," Leo answered, his voice full of emotion. "And it changed my whole life forever." Emily smiled gratefully and rode off, pedaling happily toward the street. Leo stood there, watching her disappear around the corner at twilight. Robert appeared at his side silently, putting a hand on the shoulder of the boy who was no longer a boy. "You're doing what your father would do, Leo, and what you did for me, Robert. We just pass forward what we receive." Gabriel arrived after joining them. Sarah came right behind with the papers. Tommy and Lily ran from the classroom, hugging Leo from behind, laughing. All there, in the workshop that had become a home, surrounded by tools, the smell of clean grease, and the sound of engines. 5 years ago, Leo had fixed a broken-down Mercedes in the middle of a busy avenue. He didn't know that would change everything. He didn't know he would gain a family. He didn't know he would build a legacy that would last for generations. Robert had lost his position, his status, his millionaire company. He gained humanity, purpose, true love. Sarah had lost her husband, her stability, her hope in the future. She gained dignity, a job she loved, a brilliant future for her children. And 200 young people had passed through that place, 200 who arrived without any perspective and walked out with a profession in their hands. 200 who became mechanics, technicians, engineers. 200 who became fathers, mothers, positive references in their forgotten communities, all because a 12-year-old kid had the immense courage to say, "I can fix that," and because a lost man had the courage to believe in him. Small gestures build bridges, and bridges transform entire generations.